Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Today is Monday, October 14th, 2024. We are gathered for our 1:30 Community Planning Infrastructure and Resources work session. There are three agenda items, one particular area of focus. By way of introductions, my name is John Kafalis, Commissioner from District 1, joined by my colleagues. Let's see if I can get it right this time. Thank you. The person to my right is Kristen Stevens from District 2. To my left, Jody Shattuck McNally from District 3. Of course, we all do our best to represent the entire county. And we have Lori Kadrich, our Assistant County Manager, currently serving also as our Acting County Manager. Great. And Leslie, I guess if we turn it over to you.
Yes, hi. Good afternoon. Leslie Ellis, Community Planning Infrastructure and Resources Director. You can probably tell based on who's in the room what topic we're discussing today, but we're excited to bring back to you a year later an update on the code compliance assessment and the recommendations that were in that to let you know how it's going and get feedback on the program overall. So I'll let you know also, I don't have any updates under my item, the last item, other than that the ranch item that was going to be today is now going to be on the 21st, an update on the fair and rodeo. So we're excited for that also. And because I may need to slip out a little bit early, depending on how long this goes, I'll just say that now, and then I can pass it along and slip out as needed. So I'll pass it to Amy White, who's going to do the presentation. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Amy White, Code Compliance Supervisor, joined by the Code Compliance staff, as you can see, that we're also proud of. As Leslie said, we're here to give an update on the assessment from last year that we worked so hard on. We did come up with 8 items that we thought would be beneficial, and so we'll touch on each one of those this afternoon and then discuss any feedback or additional direction from the Board of County Commissioners that you'd like to offer. Just as a reminder, the code compliance philosophy is balanced and educational approach versus enforcement focused. We like to be fair, we like to be consistent, we like to be firm and timely. So those are kind of the different values that we take out into the field with us when we go out. One of the first things we did, we modified the number of days to respond to our notification letters. We've worked with the county attorney staff to revise those. We've changed the first letter to be titled a notice of violation and 30 days to respond to us. And then we changed the second letter to the final notice with 15 days to contact us. So that's kind of a reverse order, but if they didn't contact us within 30 days initially, there was no reason to give them another 30 days. And then we're currently working with IT to insert that into InterGov currently so that we can use that in anticipation of the work that we're doing with NED. We did expand the use of legal enforcement tools. Since the beginning of the year, we've filed or will soon file 3 cases in county court and 6 cases in district court. We've enforced 2 previous court orders and will enforce another in the coming weeks. We've conducted 2 property cleanups and we're starting another one tomorrow up on top of Storm Mountain. When we file these court cases, we've been using stipulations which the defendants admit to the violations, and then we come up with deadlines for them to follow so that we can track it a little bit better. While they're working towards compliance, and then it's really provided us with some clear next steps. So one of the particularly of note cases is one that didn't follow the stipulation, and we are able to fine them pursuant to state statute. And they've got 6 different violations. We're fining them at $50 per violation beginning June 22nd, so we're up to $28,000 right now that we're going to be able to collect. And Christine Luckison and I will be back in a couple weeks to explain how that process will work.
Amy, may I interrupt
Yes.
for a moment, colleagues? Just on the notable case that you just described. So because that if I understood you correctly, that's a stipulation. Therefore, the property owner was aware of the violations and agreed to the corrective action.
That is correct.
Can you, well, maybe you are not allowed to speak to this. I mean, that's a big fine there that adds up. I'm not sure what, I guess that would have to go to the courts to try to secure those
Right,
funds.
the court, so we filed the complaint. The defendant answered. We entered into the stipulation. They didn't follow the deadline, so then we went back to the court and said, "Court, can we impose the fines now?" And so they were well aware of what those next steps were going to be, which is why these stipulations have been so beneficial for
And
us.
before we went back to the courts, did we engage with the property owner to ensure that they were clear on what they needed to do?
We did indeed.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep. And again, we'll explain a little bit more how that process is going to work in a couple weeks. And we've been working with Irene Josie from the Treasurer's Office. So,
Thank you, Amy.
yes. One of the major things that we've done is revise the code compliance priority ratings. I think if you remember, a lot of things were getting lumped into that B category. So we broke out the B1 and B2, and then for the zoning priorities, we kind of moved those around a little bit, which has been very beneficial. What we want you to know is that we worked with planning and building to make sure that they weren't impacted by those and made sure that we got their buy-in. We also talked with the engineering for priorities for the right-of-way and the floodplain. They did not have any updates for us. So we've really reached out to make sure that what we're doing doesn't have negative impacts on our other divisions. And once we kind of go over these with you today, those will go up on our webpage so that people are more aware of what we're doing. So first on the building priority ratings, one initial beneficial thing is newer moved commercial and residential buildings were moved to priority A2. We had one of those a couple years ago that caused a lot of problems for us, so that has increased in priority. The B1 building violations, those are ones that present possible life safety hazards, including but not limited to additions and alterations that contain a bedroom or sleeping area. Obviously, we're very concerned to make sure that there's proper egress, smoke and alarms, et cetera. And we want to make sure that it doesn't change the building's egress path. Even though there may be a window, sometimes people configure things such that there's not a clear shot to a door as well. Anything that affects the fire-rated construction or structurally changes a building, those are now kind of where we're going to be focusing our attention. Other additions and alterations to residences or attached garages, and then all commercial decks will also be a priority at this point. The installation of windows or doors in new locations, it changes the header, and we need to make sure that those are properly engineered. Attached decks, replacing stairs, handrails, and guardrails seem to be something that gets changed quite a bit. And then when you're moving a gas appliance location, that's important. So the B2 violations will then be those that present less chance of a safety hazard, including but not limited to other additions and alterations to residences, commercial buildings or attached garages, such as bathroom and kitchen remodels, and basement finishes that do not contain a bedroom. Converting an attached garage to habitable space, people make it into kind of a bonus room, but they don't use it as a bedroom. So that's it's a priority, but not quite as much of a priority. Residential decks not serving the front door, detached decks over 30 inches high, gas appliance replacement in the same location, detached residential accessory buildings over 200 square feet, and then roof replacement without a permit. And again, we've gone over this with the inspectors and with Eric Freed, the building official. Are there any questions there? That's kind of detailed.
Thank you, Amy. Colleagues, any questions or feedback at this point? Yes, ma'am. Commissioner.
Thank you. Amy, I appreciate all this information. I'm just curious, back to the slide with the roof replacements. Sometimes when we have a hailstorm, we have a whole plethora of roofs. I see it right now happening. So is that the and forgive me if I don't know all these because, things have changed, but I'm just curious. Is that going to be the responsibility of the company they hire? Is it for the land or the property owner? And what does that look like? And then, because we get a whole slew of these, and I'm sure it's hard to keep up with all of those, and I'm just curious about that.
Yes, technically, it's the property owner's responsibility. Some of these roofing companies that come through afterwards, a lot of them are licensed with us, so they know to come get a permit. It's the ones that are kind of fly-by-night that we have issues with. And then roofs, the metal roofs, we always like to make sure that those have permits too. So again, Commissioner, it's not that they're not a priority, it's just not quite as much of one. And I know that we were talking with Mark Tousley, who's the lead inspector, a couple weeks ago, and after this last round, I think he said that some days there were like 50 roof inspections from replaced roofs.
Yeah, I was curious about that. And
Yeah.
I just asked that for the public too, to hear, because there are folks that just, we've been
Yes.
getting phone calls too, like, don't you want to do this? Don't you want to do this? And so I just also want to make sure the public's hearing that information too.
Great, thank
So,
you.
Thank you.
Yep. So then on the revised zoning priority ratings, type A are proactive and complaint-driven, right? So if we see something going on, we can come back and get Rebecca's buy-in and say, hey, doesn't look like, or they're expanding, we should jump on this sooner rather than later. So anything that's an imminent danger, dangerous but not imminent, those are priority A. And then these last two are new to the type A, and those are illegal businesses which are not allowed in a zone district, right? So there's really no path forward for these folks. Or illegal businesses that have previously been denied by the Board of County Commissioners. We've seen an uptick in those as well, so those kind of take a little bit more priority for us. Type B now is complaint only, and that's for staffing limitations. So it kind of precludes the proactive ones, but junk and debris, which has a significant negative impact on surrounding properties, property values, and/or quality of life enjoyed by the property owners in the area. Expansion of non-conforming businesses, violations of conditions attached to a previous approval, and then this is one that's been really helpful for us, illegal businesses that could be allowed in a zone district with proper planning approval. The type B violations then are violations holding up the issuance of building permits. So we've got setback violations, perhaps, that need to go through a planning process to get that variance. So that would be one case. And then we found going through this that we didn't have anything that addresses recreational vehicles, which is one of our highest calls that we get. So that is now a type B priority. Type C then are in the green font, and they'll kind of on the second page, junk or debris visible only to the complainant, which has a moderate to low negative impact on surrounding properties. And this is, somebody needs to reside within like a neighborhood or 500 feet. It's not just the next neighbor, but some of these junk and debris complaints affect a whole neighborhood, right? Because it could be the houses you just drive in, but you don't live till around the corner. So we've kind of narrowed that down. We have had instances where there's a complainant up in the LaPorte area complaining about somebody down in Berthoud. Those we don't take quite as, because they're not really having an impact on that person on a daily basis. And then type C, sign code violations, except this time of year. It is always fun. So all we can do is really enforce placement and the size, but we can't do anything with the content necessarily. So those have kind of taken a lower priority. And then graffiti violations, we just don't seem to have that many, and it's easier just for us to go out and correct it ourselves. We've got paint, and it's just easier to go out and take care of it ourselves. And then the code violations is determined by the code compliance inspector, which have little or no negative impact on the surrounding area. And again, limit those to that 500 square feet. That's also in keeping with the planning notification. So that's kind of why we picked that 500 just to kind of be consistent in that regard. Any questions on those violations or priority?
It looks like we're good to go.
All right. So one of the other things we had asked for your direction from last year was addressing these illegal businesses. And as I said, the modification of the priority ratings has really allowed increased enforcement and consistency. So we can kind of look at it in a different frame of mind. Again, back to the fair, firm, and consistent. Presence of life safety and environmental concerns. Determining whether there is a path to compliance. If there's no path to compliance, there's no reason for that, for us to spend time on it. The level of impact on surrounding properties, and generally, we allow them to continue to operate as long as they're quote-unquote working with us or having signed one of the stipulations in court. So that's really helped us to kind of narrow down our vision. Violations during the planning process. This has been proven to be a very useful tool in the planning process. So there are times when we can hold up that final approval based on something that needs to be done for the code compliance piece of it. As well as that also holds true with special event permitting. It's been helpful. And I think it's important to note that there have been no funding or staffing increases in any of this. We've done it all within our existing group that we have. So that's been helpful. This is one we're kind of excited about. We had asked if we could impose a fee for the code compliance administration fee. And when this applies to all as-built, previously, if somebody did the work themselves, that would have a double fee. But this $100 goes to any as-built that comes in. So we collaborated with our administrative staff to make sure that they could collect that. The building department, right, the permit techs needed to be aware that that was going to be coming in. The fee began to be imposed in February. To date, we've collected $6,300, which is money we've never had before. So that goes into our fund, and the customers haven't seemed to notice it at all. So there have been no, what do you mean we have another fee? So that's one that we're pretty excited about. Any questions on that one?
Amy, I just want you to clarify for the community. Earlier, you said determining whether there's a path to compliance for an illegal business. And then you said if there isn't, there's no reason for the staff to spend time on it. So then what happens to that business?
So then we would take them to court at that point to either get an injunction for them to stop or for them to voluntarily stop. And sometimes if an illegal business isn't allowed in a zone district per se, there are options. We can try to find a different place for them to move to. There are, they can try to rezone. It's sometimes difficult to do. But there are options that we offer folks before we just go in and shut them down or whatever. But we would probably take them to court would be our most effective tool at that point. Uh-huh. All right, next is, we had we were gonna, and we still want to, file a notice of violation with the clerk and recorder on these permits that are expired, making sure that the back of the permit has been signed and people are aware that we're going to do this. It helps for subsequent owners of that property to know that there's some sort of issue with the property and that give them our notification information so that we can work it out and get it fixed. It's easily fixable. We just sometimes don't have the traction to get folks in. And we often joke it's amazing how many times these cases come around, right? We kind of, it loses its priority and then 2 years later it's for sale again, and so that it just kind of re-ups. So it's not that we ignore them. It's just that staffing wise, sometimes we just let them sit for a minute and they'll usually come back around. So this is the one that we haven't instituted yet. It took a little bit more than we thought. There's considerable coordination with the building permit techs and that piece of this. The update to the previous process was more significant than we thought. It had been developed in 2010, and things have changed quite a bit since then. But our goal is to have that one instituted as well by the end of the year.
Yes, for example, the graphic that you show, I don't believe in the construction industry they actually use regular hammers anymore.
Possibly. I don't know. Do you guys use the hammers anymore?
It's still a requirement anytime you work on a Habitat for Humanity house. They don't allow you to use air guns.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I have pictures.
Yep.
Just from a couple months ago.
Yep.
So, the last one that we're going to talk about is the creation of the home and rural occupation registration process. This has proven to be the most controversial tool that we've instituted. It did pass the Planning Commission and the BCC with follow-up in a year after that. The land use code changed from may submit a registration form to be required to submit the form. We've updated the form itself. It's now fillable online. And to date, we have not received a registration form. So it's not like we're out knocking on doors saying, hey, you need to come in and do this. We will address it as those come up with the illegal businesses that we work with. Question?
What is your understanding of why no one has done this?
We have not made it, we haven't done any kind of advertising or notification to anybody, and that was never the intent. The intent were for these folks that say they're going to operate within these limitations and then they exceed that, and it's kind of our frequent flyers that we find that this will be very beneficial for us.
So at this point, we really don't know in the unincorporated Larimer County how many of these types of home rural occupations may exist.
That is correct. Okay, any more questions on that one? Yeah.
Oh, on the previous one, if that would be okay to ask.
Yeah.
So, couple of questions. Has this priority system so far helped streamline or helped focus efforts so that you, to help you all have more capacity or help kind of take the pressure off the list? Does the list ever goes down? Just curious.
The list doesn't go down, but it has been beneficial for when a violation is discovered for us to say, okay, is this a B1 or a B2 at this point, right? To make sure that we're addressing the more pressing life safety. So when we get phone calls and people want to work with us, right, there are people who want to work with us and there's people who don't want to work with us. And it's easier for us to work with the folks that do want to work with us. So that's kind of where we focus our attention. But yes, it's been much more beneficial and streamlined so that we have a better understanding of what's important.
So, if I'm Mr. Chair, another question. This is great to hear that, because that was one of the reasons for some of these changes. The second, of course, there's certainly life safety issues are priorities, but some of those other issues down the list that are greens or whatever are still important to the people who are making them, because it is impacting their life. So when we look at that system and response, are those things that are less priority? I wouldn't say they're less priority, but
Yeah.
they're coded differently. Are they getting addressed at least timely, or is it like, okay, we have this full list, it'll be a couple of months? I'm sure it's not a couple of months, but you know what I'm saying? It's just, how does that shake out for the new system? Just curious. Or are you finding that it's just helping to kind of put them in certain categories and be able to move them.
Right. And when you first started to talk, Commissioner, I was like, oh, I should say they're all important, right? It's just that we focus differently. When we get a complaint, we acknowledge it within 24 hours that we've received it. We say it's going to take us a little bit, 3 weeks generally, to investigate but we get back with everybody regardless of the priority level.
Okay, so that's helpful, and then you
Yeah.
just work it from there, because even one that could be considered life safety might take weeks to get through, because.
It will, yeah.
Yeah, so that's great to hear. So all of them get responded in the same time frame. It just takes, how complicated it is how it's kind of, they'll progress.
Correct.
So, okay.
And on the sign, generally, those are taken care of within a week or at the most, because it's either in the right of way or it's not. And size-wise, they can get a permit for it, but it's easier to come in to get that permit. So we're not ignoring anything else. That's just where we focus.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then my last one is the coordination. That always takes time, because it's kind of changing systems and how you all work together. What's overall the feeling from the teams and the collaboration between you all about this kind? Is it? My assumption is that being clear and kind and having this process, as you said, fair, consistent,
And consistent,
firm.
yep.
Yeah. Is that helpful? Do you find that everyone's kind of getting in the groove and kind of feeling this is a good way to go forward?
Yep, I want to stress that we do work very collaboratively. We had a meeting this morning that had the plans examiners, building inspectors, code compliance staff. So it's important that everybody's aware of what we're doing, because it does affect a lot of people, and it's done differently than a lot of counties. So we have as much communication as we can. If we're working on an as-built permit and it's kind of a funky one, we'll make sure that we put notes in the file so that the inspectors know when they go out into the field, hey, this is what you're looking at. So we try to be as collaborative, and also with the planning folks. We're sitting in on a lot more of the pre-application meetings, which helps everybody, because it is confusing sometimes what the violations are. And when we're in the room, we can streamline it and explain it a little bit more. So we're increasing our communication with everybody, which has been very helpful.
That's wonderful. And if I might, just last one, this, we just happened to see this more recently, and I've been hearing from folks where they buy a home that has things and they didn't know, and I think we all know stories or something like that happened to maybe someone or even us. So do you, as this goes through the area and this is kind of noted, is that going to be noted right at the time of sale, or can you explain to me how those new buyers, and then should we be helping alert folks who are selling homes to understand this new system, so that, because we hear a lot from people like, oh, I bought this house, no one told me. And so I'm curious, how do we partner with some of those folks who are out selling homes so they understand that we're going to be telling folks this is an issue?
So we try to get out into the real estate offices and let the agents know what the process is. Now, whether or not they come in actually and do that, sometimes it doesn't always happen. This clerk and recorder process, or recording the violation, we're hoping will help with some of that, so that a new buyer can look at their title work and say, oh, what is this? So there is a lot of education. Back to that first slide, we try to educate folks as much as we can. It's still going to slip through the cracks every now and again, but we try to do as much as we can on the front end to prevent that. Again, it'll be really interesting to see if that helps once we get this process in place.
Thank you for answering all my questions, and thank you to the whole team for the work that you guys done together to kind of implement this. This has been a tremendous lift, and I want to just commend you all for working together and getting this done. Thank you.
Thank you. Couple current things that we're working on. We recently had the opportunity to do a tour of code compliance cases for the American Planners Association when they held their convention a couple weeks ago, and it was a lot of fun, and we called it the good, the bad, and the ugly. We started down south and went up to Noosa, out through Mulberry, the air park, because that's such an unusual situation for a lot of folks, and then back down Timnath, County Road 5, back down to the Embassy Suites where we started. And we've had lots of good comments on that. Some of the people in our department say, can we go on, can you do that for us? So that's in the works right now, but it was very well received. And then Chad and Alan have been out working with Lori from the Office of Emergency Management to train some of our regional jurisdictions on what we call field maps, which is where we collect the damage assessment information that feeds directly into the EOC once the guys are out doing that. So we've taken a pretty active lead on that. And then I know something that we've always been talking about, we don't have very good metrics in code compliance. So we've been working with IT staff to kind of identify some areas that we can better inform you all of our work. We're able to come up with some of those right now, but basically what we found is that the way the software is configured, it's not really conducive to get the data that we want. So we're keeping that in mind as we proceed into the configuration for NED to kind of be able to get different fields in there so we can pull out this information so it's more beneficial for you. We're really excited on that works. Hannah and I have been doing that. And the conclusion to all of this is, as you were stating, Commissioner Shattuck McNally, all of these tools have been extremely beneficial for us. It's really, we've seen a lot of good work come out of this. We appreciate your continued support. And do you have any questions or additional directions for us at this point?
Thank you, Amy. Well done. Appreciate all the good work. Colleagues, any additional questions or comments, feedback? I have a couple of things, but please, Commissioner Stevens.
Yeah, I don't really have any questions. I appreciate the update because we had talked about this a while ago, and I think you've made remarkable progress. I still think that, the business, the unlicensed business piece is important, and obviously you guys do too. I think that's just another tool for you to have, but it really, we've probably all had those kind of calls about, in what feels like in a more residential area where there's businesses operating that don't feel quite right for the, for the area. And, I always think about this kind of thing in the fairness terms of, there's a lot of people who are like, it's my property and I can do what I want with it.
Yes.
And yet, it can affect your neighbors, the health and safety of your neighbors. It can affect the value of your neighbors' homes. So in a way, you don't get to do everything that you want to do, right? And it's because it's in fairness to all the people that live around you, also need to have some standards and some reliability in what happens in their neighborhoods, in their communities. And so, it becomes that sort of like, freedom versus responsibility kind of, discussion. But I always think, is it fair for the people who live next door to have to see that or smell that or, deal with that maybe fire hazard, right? And so, I'm sure that's what you all think about as you go on too, right? It's not just that, that you can do whatever you want, right? And so that's where some of that, and I know there's been pushback about the business, registration is, not really even licensing, right? It's just a registration. So we kind of know what's going on, and so people have some guidelines about what they can and can't do. And there is some flexibility, but, when it comes to these life safety issues, which is why I'm also glad to see the priority listing, is because, some of these situations have risen to, very unhealthy situations that could not only affect just the neighbors, but, the larger community in many cases. And so, I know that, there again, I know it's not easy work to do, and I appreciate all of you who do that, because I know that there's these conversations are not easy to have with these homeowners. But, I mean, they are issues that affect the community, and so it's really important to get this right. So I'm glad these tools are helpful to you. I don't have any questions, but I just appreciate that you found a way to, kind of streamline the work you do and make it easier, and very supportive, and thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say, just continue, and you have I'm just going to speak for myself, but I support all the work you're doing, and anything you can do to make your jobs more efficient for you. You have long lists, and I think that you've done a great job, and I want to just say kudos, keep going, and glad for all of you being here today. Thanks.
Yep, kudos, keep going. Thank you. I have two questions.
Yep.
One is, can you share a little bit about what you're considering with regard to improved metrics that can help us to better understand what we're doing well and perhaps where we need to improve?
Yes. One of the things we're looking at is getting a better feel for the types of cases that we're working on, right? So there's like RVs or short-term rentals, and right now they're all just going into the same bucket. We're hoping that we can identify those a little bit more and see if there are things we can do to help with that. Some cases we open and they get closed the next day. Some take 10 years. So we're trying to get a better feel for how long a typical case actually goes for. We're trying to determine if a lot of what we do now includes floodplain issues. Then you have to go to the planning process, and then you can finally get a building permit, right? So there's a method to our madness. I know IT was like, well, can you identify what the most important violation is? We can identify it, but if it doesn't follow through those certain paths, it doesn't matter if it's the most important. Because if you don't get flood review board, there's no sense you can't get approval for anything down the line. So same with planning. If you don't get that setback variance, there's no reason to go get a building permit.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy. My second question, we've all referenced that time is precious, especially with our code compliance folks who are out and about, scouring the countryside, trying to build good relations. So I guess my question is, are we doing better in terms of the process for informing you when we get a complaint directly to us and the whole anonymity thing? I know that's a sensitive thing, and we want to be very mindful of, we go through you, Rebecca. How's that going, and can we do better, or do we need to do better in terms of, you know what I'm trying to get at?
I think it's going better. I still think, it's difficult, and I don't know if Christine wants to speak to this, but that whole Colorado Open Records request, right? So if people request those documents, and that's when we're subject to releasing people's names, that if it's not in an email, then we don't have necessarily a name to release for that.
But when we receive a complaint, and it relates to, what's subject to Colorado Open Records Act, are we following the protocols or processes that we've agreed upon or sort of agreed upon, where a commissioner would contact the code compliance supervisor? Can you talk about that a tiny bit, please?
So if you all get an email, it's easier and more cleaner necessarily if you all if you all call us rather than sending us an email. It's better for us, because then we're not caught in the middle. If we were to get that request and it came through an email, we're required to release that information.
And that's, one of the reasons that folks might present a complaint is anonymously, is concerns about perhaps retaliation.
Correct.
What if, rather than an email, we receive a voicemail and have a phone conversation with the individual, and then sometimes we might forward that voicemail through our Zoom system? Can you talk about that?
That would still be needing to be released under a CORA request, if they requested that. We try to keep it as, we don't say, oh, here's who complained, but we try to be very,
Okay.
what's the word I want?
But I think you're good. And I can't imagine we get too many instances where folks have found out that somebody contacted a county commissioner and they want to get the details of who that was. I can't imagine that happens too often. I just want to make sure that we're following the process in a way that isn't taking up too much time of our folks on the ground. I don't want to make them cranky or anything like that.
This isn't a good group to make cranky. No, I'm teasing. No, here's what we've got up on the webpage, on the code compliance webpage. So under limited circumstances, a lot of times somebody will call and will say, we're going to need you to file a complaint on that. Usually it's a zoning violation. Building code violations we can be more proactive on because there are potential life safety issues. So under limited circumstances, a commissioner may accept an anonymous complaint. Those circumstances being when the complainant is experiencing a perceived or actual threat from the owner or operator of the property for which they want to file a complaint, and if the land use or buildings on the property are a high priority code compliance case type, which would include health and safety issues with a building, and on and on. So this is kind of where our priority ratings are coming in to play at this point.
Has this particular FAQ been up there for a while?
Yes.
Yes, and as you go down on this list, it talks about the process. So if you choose to proceed with the anonymous complaint process, a phone call to the commissioner for your district is the suggested route. Email communication may be subject to the Colorado Open Records Act. So we try to be really upfront and clear with people that anything in writing could potentially be subject to open records, and really the only way to be considered anonymous is a phone call to one of the commissioners.
And does a voicemail also count as subject to CORA?
That might be a better question for our attorneys to answer, but the direction that I believe we've received from the attorneys is that as long as you're not passing that voicemail along to any staff, it remains protected. As soon as you forward that voicemail to staff, there's the potential for it to be subject to CORA.
Great. Thank you for answering my questions. And actually, I wasn't aware that this explanation was on the website. Maybe you could send us a quick little link just to this little spot, and some of us could do a little bit of
Sure.
homework and review it.
We'd be happy
Maybe
to.
print it out and have it in our back pocket.
And the other, a lot of times the folks have called us before they call you, and, they'll say to us, well, we don't want to file a complaint, and then we'll give them this option at that point.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so that's generally when you get that call.
Thank you very much for providing this information, for entertaining the question. I don't have anything else. Lori, anything you'd like to ask or offer?
I just thought I heard an acronym earlier, something about NED.
Oh, sorry. NED is the new version of the InterGov, our program that we enter all our data and issue the permits and the planning process approvals and all of that. And NED stands for Next InterGov.
I can cover this.
Yeah.
So NED is an acronym that stands for New InterGov Design, and it was a naming and mascot competition that we ran through our department to give some branding to the system, similar to what our IT department has done for some other systems that the county has adopted, as a way to really give it a Larimer County focus, and really emphasize that this is a system that we're designing specifically for our community and our residents.
Thank you. And it looks like we have trained our assistant county manager well, and all of us to remind ourselves that it's a good idea to explain acronyms.
I thought I did good with the CORA, so that's Colorado Open Records Act.
So,
And just in conclusion,
Yes.
This pertains really to all public servants, but I found this when I was going through and completing the assessment. But we take the time, we make the effort, we explain the why, we offer the how, we expect rejection, we offer alternatives, We accept refusals, and then most important is to celebrate our success. So thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Is there anything else? Colleagues, anything you'd like to share, afterthoughts? Then we are done with this part of our work session, and we'll move on to Community Development Director's update. Well done, Amy.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And yeah, I just want to echo the kudos for our code compliance team. It's a small but mighty team that carries a very heavy caseload and has to make decisions every day, judgment calls every day on what is the potential safety issue or risks associated with a property and how those things get prioritized. So there's a lot of professional judgment that's required in that group, and a lot of people skills, relationship management and de-escalation and customer service. And so it's a group that just does a great job modeling those behaviors, and the tour that they did with other community planners from other communities around Colorado was excellent. I was talking to some planners from Garfield County who were just blown away with the way that we approach collaboration between code compliance, building, planning, engineering. It really is a unique model, and it's pretty awesome when we get a chance to showcase it like that.
I'll just share that I got so many phone calls from other elected officials or people at that conference about that tour and some of the things you guys presented on. All praise, boy, aren't you so lucky? And I'm like, yes, I am. So I just wanted to tell you, I got every day got phone calls, and that, especially about that tour. So, and the Northern Colorado group that you brought together. So I just wanted to say, it's really cool as a commissioner when you get people just calling and praising. But I already know how amazing you guys are, but just to hear that, just want to make sure you knew I was getting phone call. It was nice phone calls. It was fun to say, yep, they're a great team. So thank you.
That's great. Love to hear that. All right, moving on to Community Development Director updates. I have just one update for you today. I don't think I ever introduced myself. I'm Rebecca Everett, Community Development Director. Just one update for you. I believe I had given you a heads up, but I wanted to let you know that we officially issued a letter to the city of Fort Collins regarding the completeness of the Halligan Reservoir Expansion 1041 permit application. We have deemed that initial application incomplete. They were missing several different documents and materials that were required as part of their submittal. So that has been sent to the city of Fort Collins. They have acknowledged receipt of that, and they'll be working to add to their application materials to resubmit to get a complete application. So time frame in terms of a potential hearing with Planning Commission and Board of County Commissioners has been pushed out. We don't have an exact expectation for a resubmittal date yet from the city of Fort Collins. Initially, we had been planning on December and January for hearings on this project. So we are into next year for potential hearings on that particular project.
Thank you, Rebecca. Anything else?
That's it for me today. Thank you.
I'm curious, if I may, colleagues, can you give us a couple of takeaways from the American Planning Association conference?
Yes.
It's great that happened here. Why? Who? What are some lessons learned, perhaps?
Yes, I would be happy to share and remind everyone who might be watching that we are in the month of October, which has been designated as Community Planning Month by our Board of County Commissioners. So yes, City of Loveland and Larimer County were the hosts of the Colorado Planning Conference. The Colorado chapter of the American Planning Association puts that on every year. We hosted that at the Embassy Suites at the Ranch Complex. So while Loveland was the host city, we had the host facilities. We had several different sessions, tours, and other events that we helped to organize, and we had staff who were on the host committee as well. So in addition to the tour that Amy mentioned of co-compliance success stories around Larimer County, we also hosted a Northern Colorado Land Use Roundtable, which was intended to foster dialogue with planners from all around our region in central northern Colorado, primarily focused on Weld and Larimer County communities. And it was an opportunity to start conversation and start to build some relationships and connections on topics ranging from housing to infrastructure to water to wildfire mitigation and transportation and any other topics that might be top of mind for planners. And that was a opportunity to start to build some momentum around some of the conversations we would like to be scaling up to a regional level. One of our planners, Senior Planner Michael Whitley, was a presenter in a really excellent session on the use of religious institutional property for housing development. And so it focused on the Heartside Hill project in Fort Collins, which you all voted to help fund, as well as a couple projects in City of Loveland. And it was the panel of speakers was excellent. It included a pastor from one of the churches in Loveland, Representative Andrew Basnecker, talking about state legislation, and planners who were involved in those projects. It was, I attended that session. It was very well done, and Michael helped organize that. And then we also did a session, we're involved in a session talking about the development review process and building, using empathy to build stronger partnerships between planners on the local government side and applicants who might be on the other side of the table, and how to work more productively and efficiently together through those processes. So we had a lot of staff in attendance, and there were a lot of planners and appointed officials, not just from Larimer County, but from Loveland, Fort Collins, Berthoud, Estes Park, Greeley, Timnath, Windsor, Johnstown, all of the Wellington, all the communities in our county and our neighbors. There was a really strong presence and really wonderful conversations about our area of the state.
Great. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Yes, Commissioner.
I know I saw this on social media, I don't know where, but it looked like your department took a field trip into the mountains. Can you share what that was about?
Yes, yeah, a group from our department, primarily the planning team, but I know we had some participation from some of our other divisions as well, took a trip up to Estes Park to visit Chile Camp and some other locations last week. And Amy, you were on that field trip. Is there anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, it was, we have some concerns with Chile, and it was a good opportunity to introduce ourselves. They initially reached out to us to see if we could get a non-conforming determination for them, because they kind of expanded what they offer. And so that's probably as far as we can go with that. But we did meet the original fellow that set up the tour, unfortunately passed away in August. So it was unfortunate, but we met with one of the owners and got off to a really good relationship. So hopefully we can work together moving forward.
And those tours are something that our planning team has been working to organize on a monthly basis. They pick a different area of the community to go visit, and it's a way to get eyes on properties, sometimes challenging properties that really benefit from a site visit. And it's an opportunity to do some team building and learning and development, as well as knowledge transfer from some of our more senior staff to some of our newer staff. So job shadowing, and cross-training have been an important focus for our department this year, as we've had a lot of new staff join in the last couple years.
Great, thank you. I'm glad I asked the question. That was very interesting, very helpful. Anything else, colleagues? I appreciate our strong and mighty code compliance team and our 3 code compliance officers who are gentle giants. Thank you all. We are adjourned at 224.